Dad, go easy on the salt.
Why? I like the taste of it. Food with no salt has no flavor.
Dad, you and I both have high blood pressure. You know that, right? Didn't you just go see Miss Cook, the nutritionist? Didn't she talk to you about salt being bad for your high blood pressure?
It's totally made up. Pure fiction. It's fiction. It's fiction. We made it up. We made this one up. It's a made-up tale. It's a total fabrication.
Oftentimes, when people say something is common sense, they really mean that it is just common to hear and regurgitate. When someone says something is a no-brainer, they typically mean that they are literally not using their brain. When someone in the medical field applies the evidence-based paradigm, it normally indicates a preference for pooling together conclusions instead of critically analyzing studies. And when someone tells you that salt causes high blood pressure, you can bet that all of these phrases will be used and all of these underlying meanings can be applied. I had the displeasure of seeing this paper pop up on my Twitter feed a little while ago. It's called Practical, Evidence-Based Approaches to Nutritional Modifications to Reduce Atherosclerotic Cardiovascular Disease, an American Society for Preventive Cardiology Clinical Practice Statement. Also thanks to Twitter, I've also had the displeasure of encountering the delightful lead author on this paper. Previously known for her rants about literally anything, she has recently been spotted helping animals in Ukraine, and in the past has fully admitted to going vegan for animals. Now, I have no problem with that at all. I'm all for saving animals, that's her choice, and we should respect that. But that might be a minor contributing factor to the conclusions of this paper. It doesn't help that several of the other authors are plant-based for similar reasons. Of course, they recommend limiting salt intake. My favorite part about this paper is the last paragraph, when they state that there's nothing wrong with the recommendations we've been giving out for the past 50 years, people just don't listen to them. Yeah, right. Anyway, looking at the graphical abstract immediately gives me involuntary convulsions of disgust.
It's disgusting. They're sickening.
But we're here to focus on this part. Since this paper is very recent, this should give us a good synopsis of the evidence to date showing the evils of sodium. They build the case primarily on one highly publicized study employing the dietary approaches to stop hypertension, or DASH diet. The diet was pretty standard, pretty much cutting out a bunch of processed crap, meat and saturated fat, then blaming only the meat and saturated fat. However, they did have 3 different groups of sodium intake, and noticed a decrease in blood pressure the lower the sodium. Case closed, right?
Nope. You know why?
We are talking about a single digit, and in some cases, 1 to 2 point changes in blood pressure. A healthy blood pressure is considered to be at or under 120/80, with first stage hypertension being diagnosed at 140/90, and severe hypertension at 180/110. Second, if we look at within the DASH diet, we see even less of an effect of salt reduction, reducing blood pressure by around 3 and 1 points respectively. This indicates to me that the real issue has to do with the fact that the standard American diet sucks compared to the DASH diet, since sodium was matched. Even within those already diagnosed with hypertension, we don't get close to double-digit reductions in blood pressure with salt restriction alone. If salt was the cause of high blood pressure, why weren't we seeing complete reversal of this disease? And these weren't minor reductions in salt. The people eating the least salt cut their intake by 2/3. This is a consistent finding in these types of studies. The latest review of all human experiments included thousands of participants in over 100 trials. Reducing sodium intake from double the government's recommended daily intake down to nearly half of this recommendation does not lower blood pressure by double digits in normotensive or hypertensive patients. On the flip side, these studies also found increases in several stress hormones: renin, aldosterone, adrenaline, and noradrenaline. They also found slight increases in triglycerides, an indicator of insulin resistance, which is ironically one of the biggest risk factors for developing hypertension. In fact, sodium supplementation increases insulin sensitivity in diabetics. Most of all, they found an increase in the risk of dying from any cause. Another analysis found the same. The more salt you eat, the less your risk of death, and the more your healthy lifespan and quality of life increased. The crazy thing is that most people get their salt from processed garbage, and even without adjusting for this factor, the correlation was tight. That's a pretty strong indication to me that not only is salt not bad, but it is likely highly protective against many things in the modern environment. The authors stated that their findings indicated that life expectancy increased up to a sodium intake of 4 to 5 grams per day. That's right around double what most health organizations and the US government recommend. Higher salt intakes may cause minor rises in blood pressure and its restriction minor drops because it tends to attract water to it, increasing the total volume of blood. However, simplifying hypertension in this way is missing the forest for the trees. If we use this logic, we should also be telling people to restrict their water intake, since this can also lower blood pressure by the same mechanism, and pounding excess water raises it. The body will go into a stress reaction when the amounts of water and/or sodium in the blood are thrown off in order to restore balance. One of these stress reactions is to activate the renin-angiotensin-aldosterone system. When blood volume drops, the kidneys release a hormone called renin, which stimulates the formation of another hormone called angiotensin, which can then be converted into angiotensin II. Angiotensin II is a stress hormone that acts on the kidneys to increase the levels of sodium and water in the blood and excrete more potassium, resulting in an increase in blood volume and thus pressure. This hormone also increases the production of the adrenal hormone aldosterone, which does much of the same. Overactivation of this system, or hyperaldosteronism, often causes high blood pressure and in some cases is actually treated with a high sodium diet. This brings me to my main point. High blood pressure seems to be primarily driven by stress. Salt restriction is nothing but a band-aid to mask one of the symptoms of the problem that it could be in fact contributing to. In fact, even Big Pharma seems to understand this, because the great irony is that most of the leading hypertension medications work by blocking the same pathways that salt restriction activates. First off, we have the alpha and beta blockers, which antagonize the so-called adrenergic receptors. You ever been minding your own business, chillin', then someone taps you from behind and scares you? That racing of your heart and jolt in energy coincides with an elevation in blood pressure and is the result of increased adrenaline, precisely what these drugs block. It's also one of the stress hormones that is promoted by a low-salt diet, as we touched on previously. Then we have the angiotensin converting enzyme, or ACE inhibitors, which prevent the conversion of angiotensin 1 into its active form, angiotensin 2. Remember, angiotensin 2 rises when your blood volume drops, because you're restricting salt like they told you to. They also have direct angiotensin blockers in case it wasn't clear how important this pathway was in high blood pressure. Finally, we have the calcium channel blockers. One of calcium's functions is to flow into cells to produce a specific function, then flow back out thereafter. This is important for many vital functions such as neuron-to-neuron communication, heartbeat, and of course contraction of blood vessels. The flux of calcium into cells is a key characteristic of the stress response, and the prolonged overaccumulation of calcium tends to be pathological. Stress hormones such as parathyroid hormone and, you guessed it, angiotensin 2 tend to promote calcium uptake into the cells and blood vessels. In fact, one study fed rodents a high salt diet and found that they had reduced intracellular calcium in their arteries and a greater resistance to things that typically cause vasoconstriction. Salt is one of the basic anti-stress and pro-metabolic substances, and given that stress and poor metabolism are likely the two primary drivers of high blood pressure, it makes little sense to restrict salt. It makes much more sense to salt your food to your liking while focusing on complete nutrition, optimizing metabolism, and lowering stress. Join us on our journey to learn how to best do so. If you like this video, make sure to like this video. Follow us on our social media pages that you can find in the description. You can also consider donating to us through Patreon or one of our crypto wallets. We offer numerous one-on-one personal health consulting options if you donate. Don't let them fool you. Subscribe to our channel.